My fiancé's mother handed him a blank check and ordered, "Leave her and never look back." He stared at the check, then slowly took the pen. I felt my heart shatter until he signed something that made her collapse screaming, "You traitor." I, 30 female, have been with Brian, 32 male, for 5 years. We met through mutual friends, hit it off right away, and everything just worked. We had the same sense of humor, the same views on life, and we supported each other. He wasn't just my boyfriend, he was my best friend. But his mom, Margaret, hated me from the moment we met. She came from old money, the kind of wealth that gets passed down for generations. She had this mindset that people were either born into the right kind of life, or they weren't. And me? I was not. I grew up in Brooklyn, worked my way through college, and had a decent career. I was doing well for myself, but in Margaret's eyes, I was nobody. She never said it outright, but her little comments made it obvious. "Oh, so your parents own a bakery? How quaint." It must be so hard, growing up without any real financial security. "I just want Brian to have someone who understands his world." She made her feelings clear, but Brian always brushed it off. "She'll come around," he'd say. "She just needs time." I wanted to believe him. I tried to believe him. But then came the dinner that changed everything. Margaret invited us over to her house in Connecticut. She lived in one of those massive estates with the long driveway, the kind of place that looks straight out of a movie. I already knew it wasn't going to be a pleasant evening, but I had no idea just how bad it would get. We sat in her decorated dining room, surrounded by antique furniture and paintings of people who looked like they hadn't smiled in 100 years. Margaret poured herself a glass of expensive wine, looking way too pleased with herself. Then, without warning, she slid a checkbook across the table. A blank check. "Brian, let's be practical," she said. "You're making a mistake. But I'm willing to make this easy for you." I felt my stomach drop. "Write down any amount you want. Take the money, leave her, and never look back." I waited for Brian to push it away, to laugh in her face, to say something, but he just sat there. The moment that shattered me, I couldn't breathe. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. Brian was staring at the check, his expression unreadable. Was he actually considering this? Margaret must have sensed my panic because she leaned in, smiling like she'd already won. "Think about it, darling. You'll be free. No attachments. No obligations. Just a fresh start and a bank account with however many zeros you want." Brian let out a long breath. Then, slowly, he reached for the pen. I thought I was going to throw up. I wanted to scream at him. "Say something. Do something. Don't do this." Margaret watched with satisfaction as Brian uncapped the pen and lowered it to the check. I couldn't move. I just sat there, watching my life fall apart in slow motion. Then, Brian started writing. Margaret leaned forward, eager to see the number he'd written. And then, her face drained of color. Then she screamed. Like, full body, soul leaving the body kind of scream. Because Brian hadn't written a dollar amount. He had signed the check over to me. Margaret's scream echoed through the dining room. Her hands shook as she grabbed the check, eyes scanning it like she had read it wrong. "What is this?" she shrieked. Brian leaned back in his chair, calm as ever. "You said it was blank. I figured I'd give it to the person who actually matters in my life." Margaret's face twisted with fury. She slammed her hands on the table so hard the wine glass tipped over, deep red liquid spreading across the white tablecloth like blood. "You stupid, ungrateful boy. Do you have any idea what you've just done?" Brian shrugged. "Yeah. I made sure my fiancé gets what she deserves." I sat there, still frozen, my heart racing. I hadn't even touched the check, but Margaret's rage was directed at me now. Her eyes were wild, her breath ragged. "You," she spat, pointing a shaking finger at me. "You did this. You manipulated him. You tricked him into turning against his own family." I had barely processed what was happening when she suddenly lunged across the table. Brian shot up, grabbing my arm and pulling me back before she could reach me. "Mom, stop." But she wasn't listening. She was losing it. Her hands clawed at the check, as if tearing it up would undo what had just happened. "This isn't happening. This isn't happening," she kept muttering. Brian pulled me behind him, shielding me from his own mother. "You need to calm down." "Calm down?" she shrieked. "You just threw your entire future away for—" She turned to me, eyes burning with hatred. "This nobody." That snapped me out of my shock. "I am not a nobody," I said, voice shaking but firm. "I've never asked you for a single thing. I never wanted your money. But if you think Brian can be bought, you never really knew your own son." Her face twisted. "You will never be part of this family." Brian exhaled sharply, his jaw tightening. "Then maybe I don't need to be part of this family either." Margaret staggered like he had slapped her. "What did you just say?" "I'm done, Mom," Brian said. I've put up with your judgment, your manipulation, your constant disrespect toward the woman I love. But this? Trying to pay me off like I'm some hired help? I'm done. Margaret started shaking her head, stepping back as if she could physically reject what was happening. No. No, no, no. You don't mean that. You can't mean that. Brian reached for my hand. Come on, let's go. But just as we turned toward the door, Margaret's voice changed. It wasn't angry anymore. It was cold. If you walk out that door, you'll regret it. Brian stopped. I turned, and the look in her eyes made my stomach drop. The rage was still there, but now it was sharp. Calculated. She wasn't just mad anymore. She was planning something. You think you can just walk away from me? Margaret said, voice low. You think you can defy me and everything will be fine? Brian didn't answer. He just tightened his grip on my hand. She stepped closer, her heels clicking against the floor. I've spent years building your life, Brian. Every opportunity, every connection, every job offer you've ever gotten, it's because of me. My breath caught. Brian's entire body went still. Margaret smiled, slow and cruel. Do you really think those doors opened for you on their own? That all those lucky breaks just happened? She shook her head. They didn't. I made them happen. And just as easily, I can take them away. The weight of her words settled like a stone in my chest. Brian had worked hard his entire life. But now I was starting to wonder how much of his success had been his. And how much had been Margaret pulling strings in the background. Brian let out a small, humorless laugh. So what? You're going to blacklist me? Make sure I never work again. Margaret's smile widened. Watch me. And I believed her. This wasn't just a tantrum. This was a threat. And Brian knew it too. His expression darkened, his knuckles white as he clenched his fists. But then, Margaret wasn't done. She turned to me. And what she said next made my blood run cold. And as for you, sweetheart, you might want to check your job too. Because I have friends everywhere. And if you think for 1 second I won't use them, I didn't let her finish. I dare you. The words left my mouth before I even thought about them. Margaret blinked. Try it, I said, voice steady. Ruin me. Burn every bridge I have. Do it. Brian tensed beside me. Margaret tilted her head, like she was trying to figure me out. Because here's the thing, I continued. You've spent your whole life controlling people. But you have no control over me. And if you come after me, I promise you, I will make sure the whole world knows exactly what kind of person you are. Silence. Then Margaret laughed. A quiet, amused little sound. We'll see about that. And that was when I knew. This fight was just beginning. Margaret didn't come after me right away. For the next week, everything was quiet. Almost too quiet. Brian and I kept waiting for the other shoe to drop, but it didn't. We tried to move on. We focused on wedding planning, on work, on anything but the fact that Margaret had declared war on us. Then, it started. The first sign was small. One morning, Brian checked his email and found that a promising job interview he had lined up with a major firm had been mysteriously canceled. No explanation. Just a polite, we've decided to move forward with other candidates message. Odd, but not proof of anything. Then, 2 days later, his company, the one he'd been with for 6 years, suddenly restructured his department. Brian was laid off. Just like that. No warning. No severance. And the timing? Way too convenient. I wanted to believe it was a coincidence. I needed to believe that. But then my own job started feeling off. I worked in project management, and I'd always had a good reputation. But suddenly, my boss, who had never had issues with me, was nitpicking everything. My projects were reassigned. Meetings I was supposed to be in were canceled. Emails I sent weren't getting responses. Then, one morning, I came into the office and HR was waiting for me. They fired me. Not laid off. Not a gentle push-out. They outright fired me. The reason? They said I'd violated company policy. When I asked what policy, they wouldn't answer. I sat there, stunned, as they handed me my final paycheck and a non-disclosure agreement. I knew this was Margaret. She hadn't been bluffing. Brian lost it. He went straight to his mother's estate. I wanted to stop him, but I also knew he needed to do this. I followed, waiting in the car just in case things got ugly. I could see them through the window yelling. Brian was furious. I had never seen him like that before. He was pointing, pacing, his whole body tense. Margaret, on the other hand, was calm. That scared me more than anything. Then, Brian stormed out. He got in the car, face red, breathing hard. I waited, but he didn't say anything. He just gripped the steering wheel so tight his knuckles turned white. Finally, he spoke. She's trying to wipe me out completely. She said she's just getting started. I swallowed hard. What does that mean? Brian exhaled, shaking his head. She's going after my credit, my accounts, everything. I stared at him. She can't just do that. Brian let out a bitter laugh. You'd be surprised. She still has access to my financial records from years ago. She's calling in favors. She said if I don't fix this, she'll make sure we don't have a cent left to our names. That night, we got home to find a letter taped to our door. No return address. No signature. Just a single piece of paper with typed words. Call off the wedding and this all stops. I felt my stomach drop. She had someone come to our house, I whispered. Brian clenched his jaw. This is a threat. It wasn't just about money anymore. Margaret was sending people. Watching us. Leaving warnings at our front door. That was when I realized this wasn't just about me anymore. Margaret wasn't just trying to break us up. She was trying to ruin us. And I had no idea how far she was willing to go. The night after we found the letter, neither of us slept. Brian was pacing, his hands in his hair, muttering curses under his breath. I was sitting on the couch, staring at the letter like it might set itself on fire if I looked at it long enough. We need to do something, I finally said. Brian nodded, but I could tell his mind was spinning in 1,000 directions. She's watching us, he said. She's making moves faster than we can react. I exhaled. Then let's stop reacting. Let's hit her first. Brian's head snapped toward me. What? She thinks she's untouchable. But there has to be something she doesn't want people to know. Brian went still. Then, slowly, his face changed. His expression darkened, and for the first time in this entire nightmare, I saw something close to determination in his eyes. I think I know exactly where to start. Margaret's entire life was built on image. Wealth, power, connections. She had spent decades crafting a reputation of being untouchable. But Brian knew something. And that something was about to blow everything apart. A long time ago, when Brian was in college, Margaret had a huge scandal buried. One that involved fraud. Brian never had the full story, but he remembered his mother panicking when someone had accused her of manipulating charity funds. One of her friends had taken the fall, but Brian always suspected Margaret had pulled the strings behind the scenes. We started digging. And what we found? Worse than we expected. Margaret had been running multiple shady philanthropy projects where she funneled money into private accounts. Money meant for children's education programs, medical research, gone. We weren't just talking about tax fraud. We were talking about embezzlement. If this got out, it wouldn't just ruin her reputation. She could go to prison. Brian and I waited for the right moment. Margaret was hosting a massive charity gala in New York, the kind of event filled with politicians, CEOs, and media outlets. It was her night to shine, which made it our perfect opportunity. We arrived dressed to kill. Margaret didn't know we were coming, but when she saw us walking in, her expression twitched. Then she smiled. How cute, she said, swirling her wine glass. You two came to beg, didn't you? Brian didn't smile back. He handed her a folder. Margaret took it, raising a brow. Then, as she flipped through the pages, her face drained of color. Brian leaned in. Call off your war, Mom. Or I send this to every major news outlet in the country. Margaret's breathing became shallow. Where did you get this? Brian smiled. Let's just say, having connections works both ways. I expected her to scream, to lash out, to call security. Instead, she laughed. A low, bitter laugh. She tossed the folder on the table and downed her wine. Then she looked at Brian, eyes dead cold. You really think this makes you the winner? Brian didn't flinch. I think it makes you finished. Margaret exhaled, shaking her head. You have no idea what you've done. Then she walked away. Just like that. No final threat. No dramatic exit. Just silence. The next day, the news broke. Brian sent everything to an investigative journalist, and by noon, Margaret's entire world started crumbling. Her donors pulled funding. The board of directors at her charity announced a formal investigation. And then, the feds got involved. The last time I saw her was on the news. Leaving a courthouse. Reporters shouting her name. Face pale, lips pressed together so tightly I thought they might disappear. She wasn't arrested. Yet. But it was only a matter of time. She didn't call Brian. Didn't try to fight back. She just vanished. Brian and I sat in our new apartment, far from the chaos of his old life. We had lost a lot. Jobs. Stability. A sense of safety. But we had won. And for the first time in a long time, we were free.